The coffee on Galactic Commerce Station Orion 7 tasted like burnt plastic and regret. Drank it anyway. After 30 years in the military, he had learned to drink whatever was available and complain about it later. He sat alone at a small table near the observation windows. Outside, ships of every size and shape moved through the darkness of space. Some were sleek and silver. Others looked like floating cities. A few looked like nothing he could describe with human words. This was the galaxy now. Dozens of species, hundreds of worlds, all connected by trade routes and treaties that humans were only beginning to understand. Was 52 years old. His hair was more gray than black now. His hands were rough from decades of work. He walked with a slight limp from an injury he had received during the Pacific Reclamation War, back when humans still fought each other over pieces of Earth. That seemed like a lifetime ago. Now Earth was just one small planet in a very big universe. He checked a job posting had appeared that morning. The delegation needed auxiliary mechanical assistance. The pay was decent. The work was probably simple. Had been taking jobs like this for 2 years now, ever since his retirement. He moved from station to station, fixing things, helping where he could. It gave him purpose. Without purpose, he was just an old man waiting to die. He finished his coffee, picked up his worn toolkit, and made his way to Docking Bay 7. The ship was beautiful. It sat in the bay like a sculpture made of crystal and light. The hull seemed to glow from within, soft blues and greens mixing together like water. Had seen many alien ships, but this one was different. It felt alive somehow. He had heard that vessels were partly organic, grown as much as built. Looking at it now, he believed it. But something was wrong. The ship should have been humming with energy. Instead, it sat dark and silent. No glow pulsed through the crystal hull. No gentle vibration filled the air. The ship looked sick. A group stood near the boarding ramp. They were tall beings, almost 7 feet, with pale blue skin and large eyes that reflected light like mirrors. Their movements were graceful and slow, as if they were dancing through water. They were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. They had been traveling between stars for 12,000 years. Humans had only left Earth a little over a century ago. Humanity was like a child who had just learned to walk. Approached the group and bowed his head slightly. He had learned that respect cost nothing and opened many doors. "I am here for the mechanical assistance posting," he said. One of them stepped forward. He wore robes of deep purple and gold, marking him as someone important. His eyes moved over slowly, taking in the faded military jacket, the worn boots, the old toolkit. "You are human," they said. His voice was soft but carried a note of disappointment. "Yes. I am Ambassador. This is our vessel, the Eternal Radiance." He gestured at the dark ship behind him. "We are experiencing technical difficulties. We posted the request hopping for qualified engineers." "I am a combat engineer," said. 30 years of service. I have fixed everything from ground vehicles to orbital defense platforms." His expression did not change, but somehow it still managed to look dismissive. "Human engineering. Your species uses such primitive methods, combustion engines, chemical reactions, mechanical parts that wear and break." He shook his head slowly. "The Eternal Radiance is a living vessel. Her systems are based on harmonic resonance and crystalline matrices. Your skills, however impressive among your own kind, would be useless here." Had heard words like this before. He had heard them from officers who thought enlisted men were stupid. He had heard them from politicians who thought soldiers were tools. He had heard them from aliens who thought humans were barely worth noticing. He simply nodded. "I understand. I apologize for wasting your time." He turned and walked away. Behind him, he heard speak to his companions in the language. Did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. It was the tone of someone who believed they were better than everyone else. The observation deck on level 12 had the best view of the docking bays. Stood there, watching the silent ship through the thick glass. He was not angry. Anger was for young men with something to prove. He was just tired. That was harsh. He turned. A young woman stood nearby, maybe 25 years old. She had a kind face and sharp eyes. She wore the uniform of a station liaison, someone who helped different species communicate and work together. I saw what happened, she continued. Ambassador can be difficult. I am, by the way, I work as a translator here. He turned back to the window. It is fine, I am used to it. Moved to stand beside him. Together, they watched the dark ship. They have been stuck here for 3 days, she said. Something is wrong with their core matrix. Some kind of harmonic resonance collapse. Their best engineers flew in from there yesterday. Even they cannot fix it. Said nothing. 2,000 crew members are in cryogenic suspension on that ship, continued. If the core fails completely, the life support will go next. Then the cryogenic systems. She paused. They will all die. Finally looked at her. Why are you telling me this? Because you looked at that ship like you wanted to help. And because I think Ambassador is a fool for turning you away. Almost smiled. Almost. He is not a fool, he is right. I do not know anything about technology, harmonic resonance, crystalline matrices. I cannot even spell those words. Then what can you do? He thought about the question. What could he do? He was not a scientist. He was not a genius. He was just an old soldier who had spent his life fixing broken things in broken places. I know about things that break, he said slowly. I know that every machine, no matter how advanced, follows rules. And I know that when something stops working, there is always a reason. Studied his face. That sounds like the beginning of an idea. Maybe. He watched the ship for another long moment. You said their systems are self-correcting. That is what technology does, yes. It heals itself. That is what I have heard. Then why did this ship break? If it can heal itself, something must be stopping it, something external. His eyes widened slightly. You think someone did this on purpose? I think that when a living thing gets sick, it is either because something inside failed or because something outside attacked it. He pulled out his old. I want to learn more about this ship, about engineering, not the advanced parts, just the basics. I can get you access to the public database. But why? Ambassador made it clear he does not want your help. Thought about his old battalion, trapped behind enemy lines. He thought about the soldiers from the north who had come to save them. Enemies who became saviors because they chose to help instead of hate. When I was young, he said quietly, someone helped me when they did not have to. They did not ask if I deserved it. They just came. He put the away. I have been looking for a way to pay that debt for a long time. Was quiet for a moment. Then she pulled out her own. Come with me. I know a place where we can work without being disturbed, and the coffee is slightly less terrible than the stuff they serve on this level. For the first time in a long while, felt something stir in his chest. It was small and fragile, like a candle flame in a dark room. It was hope. 12 hours passed. The situation grew worse. Inside the eternal radiance, Chief Engineer stood before the crystal core chamber and tried not to show his fear. The chamber was the heart of the ship, a cathedral of living light that had burned bright for 300 years. Now it flickered like a dying candle. The beautiful blues and greens had faded to a weak gray. The walls, once warm to the touch, felt cold and dead. Had served on vessels for most of his life. He had seen core fluctuations before. He had seen power failures and system malfunctions, but he had never seen anything like this. The eternal radiance was not just broken, she was dying. His team worked around him, their long fingers dancing over holographic interfaces. They had tried everything. They had recalibrated the crystal lattices 3 times. They had flushed the conduits. They had attempted a cold restart of the core matrix, a dangerous procedure that usually worked as a last resort. Nothing helped. The ship continued to fade. Chief, one of his engineers approached, her face tight with worry. The cryogenic systems are losing power. At current rate, We have maybe 18 hours before they start failing. How many passengers are in cryogenic suspension? 2,047. Closed his eyes. 2,000 lives, sleeping peacefully, unaware that they might never wake up. He had promised them safe passage to the colony world of 4. He had promised their families that he would bring them home safely. He had failed. Ambassador entered the chamber. His purple robe seemed out of place among the working engineers. He moved with the careful grace of someone who had never worked with his hands. "What is the status?" asked. "Unchanged. We cannot identify the cause of the failure." The specialists from the shook his head. "They are as confused as we are. Our technology is supposed to be self-correcting. The ship should heal herself. Something is preventing that, but we cannot determine what." Was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke the words that had been dreading. "We must consider evacuation. The station does not have enough lifeboats for everyone. Then we will have to prioritize." His voice was cold and practical. "Children first, then essential personnel, then the elderly. We will save as many as we can." And the rest did not answer. He did not need to. Watched him leave and felt something hot and angry rise in his chest. Had spent his entire career in meeting rooms and diplomatic halls. He had never stood in an engine room and watched a ship die. He had never looked into the eyes of people who trusted him and known that he was about to let them down. But anger would not save anyone. Turned back to the dying core and continued to work. On the other side of the station, in a small room filled with old equipment and borrowed, was also working. Had found them a space in the maintenance section, a forgotten storage room that someone had converted into an unofficial break area. There was a battered couch, a coffee machine that made sounds like a dying animal, and a table covered with dust. It was perfect. Sat at the table scrolling through documents about engineering. Most of it was far beyond his understanding. Quantum harmonics, phase-locked resonance chambers, feedback loops. He recognized maybe one word in 10. But he kept reading anyway. "You have been staring at that screen for 6 hours," said. She sat on the couch, her own in her hands. She had been helping him search for information, translating technical terms, finding explanations. "Have you found anything useful?" "Maybe," rubbed his tired eyes. "I keep coming back to the same question. Ships are self-correcting, they heal themselves, so why is this one dying?" "Because whatever is wrong is too big for the ship to fix." "No, I do not think so." He stood up and walked to the small window. Outside he could see a sliver of the docking bay where the eternal radiance sat dark and silent. "When I was an engineer in the military, we dealt with many different problems. System failures, battle damage, sabotage." He paused on that last word. "Some problems come from inside, parts wear out, connections break, but some problems come from outside. Someone causes them on purpose." Sat up. "You still think this might be sabotage?" "I think it is possible. The ship is designed to heal itself. If something is stopping that healing, it could be something external, something that was put there deliberately." "But who would do that, and why?" "I do not know. That is not my job to figure out. I am just an engineer. I look for what is broken and try to fix it." Stood up and walked over to join him at the window. "Even if you are right, how would you prove it? The engineers have scanned every system on that ship. They have not found anything unusual." Thought about that. She was right. They had technology far beyond anything humans could build. If there was something wrong with the ship, their sensors should have found it. Unless the sensors were not looking for the right thing. "When I was young," he said slowly, "we had a problem in our motor pool. Vehicles kept breaking down for no reason. The mechanics checked everything. Engines, transmissions, fuel systems, everything tested normal, but the vehicles kept failing." "What was the problem?" "Mice." Stared at him. "Mice. Small animals. They had made nests in the wiring compartments. They were chewing through cables and insulation. The mechanics never thought to look there because their diagnostic equipment was designed to find mechanical problems, not biological ones. They were looking in the wrong place. So you think the engineers are looking in the wrong place? I think they are looking for problems that make sense to them, problems that fit their technology. But what if the problem does not fit? What if it is something simple, something they would never think to check because it is beneath their notice? Was quiet for a long moment, then she smiled. You really are strange, you know that. I have been told. She looked out the window at the dying ship. I spoke to some people on the station. They are preparing for evacuation. They do not have enough lifeboats. People are going to die. Felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. 2,000 people, sleeping, trusting, waiting for someone to save them. Can you get me onto that ship? He asked. What? You have station credentials. You work with the delegation. Can you get me onto the Eternal Radiance? Even if I could, Ambassador made it very clear that he does not want human help. Ambassador is not an engineer, Chief is, and Chief is desperate. Picked up his toolkit, the same worn bag he had carried for 30 years. Desperate people listen to strange ideas. That is what I am counting on. Looked at him for a long moment. He could see the calculation in her eyes, the weighing of risks and possibilities. She was young, but she was not naive. She knew that what he was asking could cost her job, maybe worse. If this goes wrong, she said finally, I will deny everything. I will say you stole my credentials. I will say I never saw you before in my life. Fair enough. She pulled out her access card. Come on, let us go save some aliens who think we are primitive. They walked together toward Docking Bay 7. Behind them, the station continued its endless work, thousands of beings going about their lives without knowing that a tragedy was unfolding just a few levels away. And somewhere in the darkness, inside the dying ship, a small device continued to hum at a frequency that no sensor was designed to detect. The corridor leading to the docking bay was long and quiet. Emergency lights glowed soft orange along the walls, casting strange shadows. Walked beside, his toolkit over his shoulder, his heart beating steady and slow. He had walked into dangerous situations many times in his life. This was just another one. 2 guards stood at the entrance to the boarding ramp. They were taller than the ones had seen before, and they carried weapons that looked like rods of solid light. When they saw approaching, they relaxed slightly. When they saw, they tensed again. Station Liaison, one of the guards said, What is the purpose of this visit? I need to speak with Chief Engineer, said. Her voice was calm and professional. This man has information that may help with your technical problems. The guard looked at with obvious doubt. This is the human who was turned away earlier. Yes. Ambassador was very clear. No human assistance. Ambassador is a diplomat, said. Chief Engineer is the one trying to save this ship. I think he should make this decision himself. The guards exchanged looks, waited quietly. He had learned long ago that patience was more powerful than arguments. People who pushed too hard made others push back. People who waited gave others time to think. Finally, one of the guards spoke into a communication device. A moment later, a response came back. The guard stepped aside. Chief Engineer will meet you at the primary engineering bay. Do not touch anything. They boarded the ship. The interior of the Eternal Radiance was even more beautiful than the exterior. The walls were made of something that looked like frozen water, blue and clear and faintly glowing. The floor felt warm under his boots, almost like walking on living skin. Everywhere he looked, he saw curves and flowing shapes, nothing sharp or mechanical. It was less like being inside a machine and more like being inside a giant creature. But the beauty was fading. As they walked deeper into the ship, the glow in the walls grew dimmer. The warmth faded. In some places, dark patches spread across the crystal surfaces like bruises on pale skin. She is dying, said quietly. Nodded, the ship is partly alive. When the core fails, everything fails. They reached the engineering bay. It was a massive circular chamber, dominated by a towering structure of crystal and light in the center. This was the core matrix, the heart of the ship. Even now, dying as it was one of the most beautiful things had ever seen. Columns of crystal rose from floor to ceiling, connected by arches of frozen light. The whole structure pulsed weakly, like a heart struggling to beat. Chief Engineer stood before the core, his back to them. When he turned, saw exhaustion in his alien eyes. The engineer had not slept in days. His robes were wrinkled. His movements were slow and heavy. The human from the docking bay said, "You came back." "I have an idea," said simply. "I do not know if it is right, but I think it is worth trying." Ambassador will not be pleased. Ambassador is preparing to let 2,000 people die. I think he has bigger problems than my presence. Almost smiled, almost. You speak directly, I appreciate that. He gestured at the failing core. Very well, what is your idea? Walked closer to the crystal structure. He did not touch it as the guards had instructed, but he studied it carefully, walking around its base, looking at every angle. When did the ship stop singing? He asked. Froze. For a long moment he did not speak. When he did, his voice was barely a whisper. How do you know about the song? I read about ships. They produce a low-frequency vibration when they are healthy, a harmony that your people can feel but most species cannot hear. Stopped walking and faced the engineer. When did it stop? 3 days ago. That was the first sign of trouble. Moved closer. But our sensors detected no change in the harmonic output. The readings showed normal frequencies. Your sensors showed what they expected to see, but your body knew the truth. The song was gone. Was quiet for a moment. His large eyes studied with new interest. You are not what I expected from a human. I get that a lot. What is your theory? Reached into his toolkit and pulled out a small device. It was old and battered, a handheld frequency detector that he had carried since his military days. Compared to technology, it was like a stone axe compared to a laser cutter. But it had one advantage. It was designed to detect things that human engineers cared about. Your systems are self-correcting, he said. The ship should heal herself. That means something is stopping the healing, something external. He held up the detector. Your sensors are tuned for frequencies, crystal harmonics, bioelectric signatures. But what if the interference is coming from a different source, something your sensors are not designed to find? That is, hesitated. That is an interesting thought, but we have scanned every system, every compartment, every. Have you scanned the maintenance junctions? Blinked. The service access points, those are just utility corridors. They do not contain any critical systems. Exactly. They are beneath notice. No one thinks to check them because there is nothing important there. Walked toward the edge of the chamber. Where is the nearest maintenance junction? Pointed to a small panel in the wall, barely visible between two larger crystal formations. There, but I assure you there is nothing. Was already moving. He knelt beside the panel and pressed his ear against the wall. For a long moment he was completely still, watched from nearby, her breath held, even had gone silent. Then pulled back and looked at his detector. The small screen showed a reading that made his stomach tighten. 14 hertz, he said. There is a low-frequency vibration coming from behind this panel, very weak. Your sensors would not detect it because it is below your normal scanning range. That is impossible, said. We would have noticed. You would have felt something wrong, but your equipment would not show anything because it was not looking for this kind of signal. Pulled a tool from his kit. May I open this panel? Hesitated. He looked at the dying core, at his exhausted engineers, at the dark patches spreading across the walls of his ship. Then he nodded. Worked carefully. The panel was not designed for human hands, but he was patient. It took several minutes, but finally the cover came loose. Inside, wedged against a conduit where no one would ever think to look, was a small device. It was black and smooth, about the size of a human fist, and it hummed with a barely audible vibration. "What is that?" whispered. "I think it is the reason your ship is dying." Did not touch the device. "It is generating a counter-frequency, something designed to interfere with your harmonic systems. Every time the ship tries to heal herself, this thing produces a vibration that cancels out the healing." Sabotage. The word came out like a curse. "Someone put this here deliberately." "That is what I believe." Stared at the device with a mixture of horror and rage. Then he turned to his engineers and began shouting orders in the language. People ran in every direction. Someone brought a containment unit. Carefully, with hands that trembled slightly, removed the device and sealed it away. The moment it was gone, something changed. It was subtle at first, a gentle warmth returning to the walls, a faint pulse of light in the crystal columns. Then slowly, beautifully, the core began to glow again. Blue and green light rippled through the chamber like sunrise over water. And somewhere deep in the ship, so quiet that only ears could truly hear it, a song began to play. Turn 2, the exhaustion was still there, but now there was something else in his eyes. Wonder, gratitude, and something that might have been respect. "You saved her," he said. "You saved all of them." Closed his toolkit and stood up slowly. His bad leg ached from kneeling on the hard floor. His body was tired and old. But for the first time in a very long time, he felt useful. "Someone else saved me once," he said quietly. "This is just me passing it forward." The song of the eternal radiance grew stronger with every passing hour. In the engineering bay, crew members wept openly as they felt the familiar vibration return to the walls. The crystal core blazed with renewed light, its colors deeper and more beautiful than before, as if the ship was celebrating her own survival. Stood near the back of the chamber, watching. He did not understand the words they spoke to each other, but he understood the emotion. He had seen soldiers react the same way when a mission succeeded against all odds. Relief, joy, the simple gratitude of being alive. Stood beside him, her eyes wide with wonder. "I have never seen anything like this," she whispered. "The ship is actually singing. I can almost feel it." "You probably can. 14 hertz is below human hearing, but our bodies can sense it." Shifted his weight off his bad leg. "It is like standing near a large speaker. You feel the bass in your chest even when you cannot hear the low notes." Chief engineer approached them. He walked differently now, his steps lighter, his posture. The weight of impossible failure had been lifted from his shoulders. "The core matrix is stabilizing," he said. "Full recovery will take several days, but the cryogenic systems are already returning to normal. The passengers are safe." "Good," said. "That is what matters." Was quiet for a moment. Then he bowed deeply, a gesture that knew meant great respect among the. "You have given us back our ship and our people. I do not have words sufficient to express our gratitude." "Then do not try. Words are not necessary." "Perhaps not, but answers are." His expression hardened. "Someone put that device on my ship. Someone wanted the eternal radiance to die along with everyone aboard. I need to know who and why." Station security arrived within the hour. They were a mixed team of different species, led by a tall female with sharp features and cold eyes. Her name was Inspector Danny, and she specialized in interstellar crimes. She examined the sabotage device with great interest. "Clever design," she said, turning the black sphere in her gloved hands. "It generates a counter-frequency specifically tuned to disrupt crystalline technology. This was not random. Someone knew exactly what they were doing." "Can you trace its origin?" asked. "Perhaps. The components are generic, but the programming is sophisticated. Give me time." Ambassador had arrived as well. He stood at the edge of the group, his purple robes perfect as always, his face carefully neutral. noticed that he had not apologized for his earlier dismissal. He had not even acknowledged presence directly. Some people never admitted when they were wrong. 3 hours later, Inspector Danny called everyone to the station security office. She had found something. The device was manufactured using equipment traced to a trading vessel, she announced. The vessel was docked at this station 8 days ago, during your scheduled maintenance period. Turn 2, the delegation. They have been negotiating with us for months. Over the trade corridor, said slowly. The treaty that would give us exclusive shipping rights through their sector. A treaty that would cut the out of billions in transit fees, Danny added. If that treaty goes through, it would devastate their economy. The pieces fell into place. They had sabotaged the eternal radiance to prevent the treaty from being signed. A dead ship full of dead diplomats would have been a massive embarrassment for them. It would have stalled negotiations for years, and in the chaos, they would have found ways to renegotiate more favorable terms. Politics had seen the same thing during the wars on Earth. People died, and somewhere far away, someone counted their coins and called it victory. We will need to involve the Galactic Commerce Authority, said. This is an act of diplomatic sabotage, perhaps even attempted mass murder. I will coordinate with my superiors, Danny replied. But I must warn you, they have powerful allies. This could become very complicated very quickly. Complicated, that was one word for it. Another word was dangerous, had no desire to be caught in the middle of an interstellar political crisis. He had done his part. He had fixed what was broken. Everything else was beyond his skills. He quietly slipped away from the meeting and made his way back to the observation deck. The eternal radiance was visible through the windows, her hull now glowing with soft, healthy light. The evacuation preparations had been canceled. The lifeboats were returning to storage. 2,000 people would wake up eventually, never knowing how close they had come to dying in their sleep. That was fine. That was how it should be. Heroes were for stories. Real life was just ordinary people doing what needed to be done. Footsteps approached behind him, did not turn around. You left before the ambassador could speak with you, said. I did not think the ambassador had anything to say to me. You may be right. Moved to stand beside him at the window. Ambassador is a proud being. Admitting mistakes is not easy for him. It is not easy for anyone. True was quiet for a moment. I came to thank you properly, not with words but with understanding. He turned to face directly. How did you know to look in the maintenance junction? Our sensors had scanned everything. Our engineers had checked every major system. How did you know where to find the problem? Considered the question. It was a good one. He was not sure he had a good answer. Your engineers were looking for what was broken, he said finally. They were trying to find the part of the ship that had failed, but nothing had failed. The ship was working exactly as designed. She was trying to heal herself, just like she was supposed to. So you looked for something else. I looked for what did not belong, something that was not part of the ship's original design, something that should not have been there, shrugged. It is a different way of thinking, not better, just different. Your people have built amazing technology, but maybe because it is so advanced you expect problems to be advanced too. You look for complex causes. And humans look for simple causes. Humans break a lot of things. We get good at spotting breaks. Finally turned to face the engineer. There is an old saying on my world, when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. Tilted his head. I do not know these animals. Horses are common. Zebras are rare. The saying means that the simplest explanation is usually correct. When something goes wrong, look for the obvious cause first. And the obvious cause was that someone had placed something on our ship that should not have been there. Yes. Nodded slowly, a very human way of thinking. We are not as advanced as you. We cannot build ships that sing, but we have learned to survive. Sometimes survival is just about noticing what others miss. The engineer was quiet for a long time. Outside the window, his ship pulsed with gentle light, alive and healing. "I would like to offer you a position," said. "A consulting role. Someone who looks at problems the way you do could be valuable to us." Shook his head. "I am too old to take a regular job. I like to move around, see different places, help where I can." "Then perhaps we can call on you when needed. Strange problems that require strange thinking." That almost made smile. "You know where to find me." Bowed again. "I do now, and I will not forget. You saved more than a ship today of Earth. You saved 2,000 lives. Whether you want recognition or not, you have earned it." He walked away, leaving alone with the stars. Recognition. Had never wanted that. He had wanted purpose. He had wanted to be useful. And for one day on one station, surrounded by beings who thought humans were primitive, he had found exactly that. It was enough. It was more than enough. 6 months passed. The galaxy continued to turn. Ships moved between stars. Treaties were signed and broken. Wars ended and new conflicts began. The universe was vast and indifferent, filled with billions of beings living their small lives in the endless dark. Kept moving. He worked on a cargo ship for 3 weeks, helping the crew fix a water recycler that had been causing problems for months. He spent a week on a mining station in the Outer Rim, identifying a fault in their ore processing system that had stumped their engineers. He passed through a human colony world and helped a family repair their agricultural drones, refusing payment and accepting only a home-cooked meal in return. He did not stay in one place for long. He never had. Some people were built to settle down, to grow roots, to build homes. Was built to move. He had been that way since he was young, since the wars had taken everyone he loved and left him with nothing but his skills and his memories. The Eternal Radiance incident had become a quiet legend in certain circles. They were too proud to spread the story widely, but engineers talked, spacers talked. Word passed from station to station, ship to ship, like ripples in water. There was a human, they said, an old soldier who fixed things. He had saved a dying ship when their best minds had failed. He had used nothing but a simple detector and a lifetime of experience. Most people did not believe the story. It sounded too much like a fairy tale. Humans were a young species, barely out of their own solar system. The idea that one of them could succeed where ancient engineers had failed was absurd. But some people believed, and some of those people started looking for him. Sent messages sometimes, short notes updating him on galactic news, on her career, on life. She had been promoted after the incident, given more responsibility and better assignments. She was doing well. She always ended her messages the same way: "Stay safe, old man. The galaxy needs people like you." Was not sure the galaxy needed him, but it was nice to hear anyway. One morning, he woke in a small room on a transit station, somewhere between the core worlds and the frontier. His bad leg ached more than usual, a sign that he had been pushing himself too hard. He was 52 years old, and his body was starting to remind him of that fact more often. He went to the station cantina for breakfast. The coffee was terrible as always. The food was bland but filling. He sat alone at a corner table, watching the other travelers move past. Humans mixed with aliens of a dozen species, everyone going somewhere, everyone busy with their own problems. A shadow fell across his table. Looked up. A young stood before him, barely out of adolescence by the look of it. The alien's blue skin was smooth and unmarked, his eyes bright with nervous energy. He wore simple traveling clothes, nothing like the formal robes of the diplomats. "Are you?" the young asked. "Who wants to know?" "My name is, I am a student of chief engineer." The young alien spoke quickly, the words tumbling over each other. "He told me I might find you here. He said you travel the transit routes and stop at places like this." Studied the young engineer. He saw eagerness there and uncertainty and something that looked very much like hope. Sends his students to find old humans. That is a strange teaching method. He speaks of you often. He says humans are strange, that you solve problems by refusing to understand them the way everyone else does. Almost laughed. That is not a compliment where I come from. It is where I come from. Sat down without being invited, the way young people did when they were too excited to remember their manners. He also said that if we ever faced a problem that our best minds could not solve, we should find you, and we have such a problem. What kind of problem? Pulled out and slid it across the table. Looked at the screen. It showed technical diagrams, sensor readings, and a lot of text in the language that he could not read. But one thing was clear. Something was very wrong somewhere. There is a research station in the sector, explained. It was studying a rare astronomical phenomenon, a living nebula we call it, energy patterns that seem almost conscious. His young face grew serious. 3 weeks ago, all communication stopped. Ships sent to investigate have disappeared. 17 vessels, gone without a trace. Looked at the diagrams. He saw energy readings that spiked in impossible patterns. He saw sensor logs that ended in static. He saw the coordinates of a place far from any major shipping lanes, far from help. Your best minds have studied this, he asked. For 2 weeks, they have theories, they have models, but they do not understand what is happening. Leaned forward. Chief said that when the eternal radiance was dying, your people's scientists would have tried to explain the problem. They would have looked for complex causes, quantum interference, harmonic decay, things like that. But you looked for something simple, something that did not belong. And you think this situation is similar. I do not know, but I know that 17 ships are missing. I know that hundreds of people may be dead. And I know that our best minds cannot figure out why. The young's eyes met directly. Will you help us? Was quiet for a long time. He looked at the young engineer's hopeful face. He thought about his aching leg and his tired body and all the years he had spent drifting from place to place. He thought about the soldiers who had saved him when he was young. They had not asked if he deserved saving. They had just come. I will need more information, he said finally. Everything you have, sensor logs, communication records, personal notes from the missing crews if you have them. His face lit up with relief and gratitude. I have everything. I brought copies of all our files. Chief said you would want to see it all. He knows me well, finished his terrible coffee and stood up slowly. His leg protested, but he ignored it. Also, I will need transport to the sector, something fast and reliable. We have a ship waiting, one of our fastest couriers. Picked up his toolkit, the same worn bag he had carried for 30 years. It had been with him through wars and peace, through Earth and the stars, through moments of failure and moments of unexpected success. All right, he said, show me what does not belong. They left the cantina together, the old human and the young alien, walking toward whatever waited in the dark between the stars. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries. Most of those mysteries would never be solved. But somewhere out there, ships were disappearing and people were dying. Someone needed to find out why. Someone needed to look at the problem differently. Someone needed to spot the simple thing that everyone else had missed. Did not know if he could do that. He was not a genius. He was not a hero. He was just an old soldier with a toolkit and a lifetime of experience fixing broken things. But sometimes, that was exactly what the universe needed. Far behind them, the transit station continued its endless work, travelers moving in and out like blood through a heart. No one noticed the old man and the young alien boarding a sleek courier. No one knew that they were heading toward danger and mystery and the unknown. That was fine. Real heroes did not need recognition. They just needed a problem to solve and the courage to try. Had both. And somewhere ahead, in the darkness of the sector, something was waiting.